I used to come away from Leavesden virtually every time, thinking, I had an idea on a train, and now 250 people are excitedly showing me latex goblins and remote control giant spiders, and they're just building a ministry of magic. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I felt the pride I felt just that group of people were assembled because I had an idea on a train in 1990. Can you imagine?
And
it was phenomenal.
It's hard for even me to imagine that. I mean, it must be extraordinary.
Great people.
What's remarkable about it, like, there's a moment in the last film which I think sort of embodies, like you were talking about, all these people basically living and breathing what you did, and there's where the dragon breaks through the roof of Gringotts. It pauses. It breathes in air through its nostrils, because it's like a bouquet of roses, because it's been in this musty confinement for decades. And it's just a small moment.
That scene
there are moments like that throughout the series.
So much to me, because in the first book, when I wrote, they say there are dragons guarding some of the high security vaults, and because I can't just write that and not think about it, this is back in 93 or something, I'm writing this. I'm thinking, God, you're keeping a dragon down there, that's a winged animal, that's not right. So I got my chance in 7 to do this enormous set piece scene in the book where they free, and it's sort of bringing to light, literally but figuratively, all the injustices in that world. That's what they're doing. Harry enters this beautiful world glittering with jewels and gold and Gringotts, but it hides ugly stuff. It was a metaphor for me. But when I wrote that scene, I'd always sort of kept my powder dry through the series and the books. I'd never gone for the massive effect, because I knew that in 7 there were a few things I wanted to do. Obviously there was going to be the big battle at Hogwarts, but that dragon bursting out of Gringotts was major, as was the fiend fire in the Room of Requirements.
Yeah.
So where suddenly you really show what magic can do.
No,
you
felt
really
it
go for it. You blast apart all the rules and the regulations. It was such fun to do. So it wasn't directly influenced by the film, but after I'd written the dragon scene, which meant a lot to me for the reasons I've just mentioned, I then thought, God, that's going to look great.
Well, no, and it was like, it was one of the, actually, it's funny you mention that scene, because I thought that it was going to be one of the more challenging ones, specifically with, the Gimino curse.
They've added the Gimino curse. Everything you touch will multiply.
And I thought, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Because I really had concerns about that, and actually, it's brilliant. And
it is.
And it's
one of my favourite parts of the movie.
Yeah, but again, you have that moment where Hermione says,
"That's barbaric."
But I think, again, it's about this world is cruel. And
it's as cruel as our world.
Oh, yeah.
It's a mirror image.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just as they can solve things that we can't solve, so they can create problems that we don't have. And that's always been the problem for Harry, that he enters this world and believes it will be an escape. And it's not. Human nature is human nature, whether or not you can use a wand.
Yeah.
So we've talked about cutting, but speaking about something that I never wrote, but I thought was perfect, and I loved, you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, the dance.
The dance.
Yeah, I mean, the dance was funny because I had the idea for it while I was writing Half-Blood Prince. I was driving home one day after working on Half-Blood Prince, and I had this idea, because a song came on the radio, and I thought, wow, what if, the radio becomes identified with Ron in Hallows? It's his way of trying to check on his family. And what if when he leaves, the radio's left behind, becomes a surrogate for him, and Harry trying to emotionally reel Hermione back in? What if he stumbles on a Muggle station, and they both grew up as Muggles, and he plays the song? But it's one thing to write that, and to write the levels of it, which I'm not going to lay out, but they're very complicated. But it's nothing to play it. And one of the things I'll never forget, the first time I saw it, when I saw it in New York, you could hear a pin drop because people were scared about where it was going, and that was its intention. And that's really Emma and Dan. They communicated, and then they
but
all the levels.
The idea was yours, and I loved it so much. And you and I, who are violently allergic to sentimentality in any form.
Yeah.
And what I loved about that scene was everything you've just said. It's just on the edge of, where is this going to topple over into? Oh my God, they're not going to kiss, are they? Are they? Are they? Are they? So I'm feeling incredibly uncomfortable, borderline embarrassed, very, very moved. It's just perfect. I loved it as an idea. And you and I had a conversation where, by email, actually. I always assume we actually had the conversation, but I'm sure it was email.
I always hear your voice in my head.
But we were talking. And you said that when they were in the tent together, you thought something was going to happen.
Yeah, I did.
As
when
you
I
read
read
the
book.
novel. And I, as I was writing it,
Yeah.
felt a real pull between them.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
That really, in a sense, gave me the license to do the scene.
Yeah.
Because I knew that
again,
emotionally it was true
completely
then.
true to the character. Why wouldn't it happen? You're alone. You might die any day.
Yeah.
The thing that's been holding you together, I mean, Ron has always been the necessary component there, and he's gone.
He's gone.
And why wouldn't you look for comfort? I think it's more likely than not, except that then Ron's got to come back and they've got to look him in the eye, and I didn't need that emotional package
Well,
on
and I
top
think
of everything else that was
and I think it's a
going on.
measure of each Harry and Hermione's love for Ron that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think also that it's one of those things that had something happen, it would have been very weird the next day.
Very weird the
And-
next day in a two-man tent.
Yeah.
And nowhere to run.
Yeah. So I mean, but I think what was interesting about it was that I thought I would get real pushback on that scene. You know,
Well,
in the
I would have
past,
defended you to the hilt on that because I thought it was perfect.
but it was embraced, and
Yeah,
no
rightly.
more than it was most enthusiastically embraced by Emma and Dan, and so it was that told me that it worked.